Good morning, still in the hotel, still in training. I thought I would just record a short little vlog to tell you about my training experience. It's about 5:20 in the morning and I just got out of the shower and I'm about to do my morning breathing exercises and yoga and stuff and get ready to head down to the terminal for another day of outdoor securement training. And yesterday was a trying day, to say the least. I think of these things are all like conditioning. Like, they should be unpleasant to a certain extent, or like challenging, because it's going to be like that in real life, and even more so, especially when you're on your own. But I have to say, just keeping it real, that the training experience has left a lot to be desired. And the problem is egos. And that's what really gets me, is so much of the time, instruction, like training, could be better if people were able to be less performative and be more just focused on how to actually convey information in the most effective way possible. But one of the interesting challenges in training for, I think, probably any industry, is there's a stark difference between teachers, like people who can do, and people who can teach. I'm sure you guys have heard an expression to that effect. I think it's an insult. It's like, there's people who can do and then there's people who teach. Like, if you couldn't hack it at something, you become a teacher, which I think is ridiculous. I've had teachers in my life, and I have a lot of respect for people who are effective teachers, instructors, trainers, because it takes a special kind of thinking to recognize that different people have different ways of learning material, and certain material is more difficult to apprehend, to learn for some people than it is for others. And so you have to be a creative instructor, and you have to be a thoughtful and even compassionate instructor to be able to convey information. And when you're talking about stuff that's very serious, that's life and death, you have to know this, or people can be killed by your mistakes. There's no room for ego. But ego always enters into it, and that's the irony, is that the more dangerous something is, the more ego tends to be involved, and then the less effective the instruction. So it's like, damn. So we have a couple of instructors. We've got the main instructor and we've got the sidekick, and the sidekick very much has sidekick energy. It's funny. It's like a cartoon. So we had other instructors last week, and now we have the outside instructors. And the thing that's frustrating is, you know that they're fully capable of like really teaching this stuff, and they really know it. So they're good in the sense that they can really do the stuff that they're teaching, but the way that they're teaching it makes it so hard for people to learn. And I've had little side convos with different people that are in my group, and we're all kind of saying the same things, like, yeah, the way that he says this, the way he talks, I can't, like, it's kind of really difficult to convey. But it almost feels like it's a bit the whole time. Like the main instructor and the sidekick are doing a bit with each other. Like, they're the cool kids, and they know they're the cool kids, so they're performing in front of everybody and like having little inside jokes with each other and stuff like that. And they're dissing other instructors, not directly saying who, but they're like, they basically came in the first day and said, everybody else is not as good as us. They said it not in so many words, like almost similar wording. I'm like, okay, well, that kind of is concerning, but also is like, okay, good, I'm glad you guys are going to show us what other people are doing wrong or whatever. And then they take us out into the yard and they start saying, okay, we're going to go look at these loads that have been dropped here, because what happens is people pick up these flatbed loads from other states and bring them to this terminal, and then they get relayed to a local delivery by a local driver. Not an uncommon scenario in trucking at all, but it's kind of messed up, because, you know, we start looking at trailers, and like one of the first ones we look at has like egregious problems, like a rip in the tarp and loose tarping, and it's just a disaster. And one of the other ones is clearly not secured correctly. And like, it made me realize that I've always been kind of a perfectionist. As I've gotten older, I've let myself relax a lot. But when it comes to these kinds of things, you know, there's really no room not to be a perfectionist. And that's what makes it so intimidating, is to me, it's like there's math involved, and there's like, I think when you're a small person, you're dealing with things that are very large in size and like heavy items that you can't personally move, but you have to secure. It's like there's this other layer of like intimidation factor, you know, and having to climb up and climb around on loads. I don't mind that. I'm comfortable with heights. A lot of people might not be, but so, you know, we're fixing stuff yesterday and whatever, but the way that they're teaching it, the problem with the teaching style, because of the energy that they're giving off of like, we're cool and everybody else sucks, which is a very real, I'm not exaggerating, like other people in the class would agree with my assessment, I guarantee you. It fosters an environment where people don't feel comfortable speaking up. So everybody's quiet. When they ask a question, nobody wants to answer it because they're like, well, I'm gonna get, you know, clowned on or whatever if I say the wrong thing. So it just creates a really uncomfortable environment. And then yesterday we were outside and it started raining and it started pouring. It's another rainy day out here and I'm just shielding myself underneath a step deck while someone else does some of the last little bit of, hi.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Are you FaceTime? Is this where the party's happening?
Apparently there's a party under here now.
You got a party going on.
I was just trying to get some shield from the rain while we're trying to
Well, I just saw him running. So
securing
I was like,
a load of, what the hell is this stuff? Why am
Drywall.
Drywall. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Good times. I feel for my, you know, fellow trainees because most of them are from out of state, from states where the weather is really hot. Now they are from states where the weather is extreme, and obviously as a truck driver you have to prepare for the elements. But some of them didn't have any kind of rain gear. They may have not been aware that we were going to be outside all day, because a lot of the stuff they don't tell you. They just start doing stuff and they don't tell you what they're going to do. They don't communicate very well because they're just not very effective communicators, and unfortunately that makes them not as good at being instructors. It's just a weird conundrum. So I felt so bad for the people I was with because nobody had rain gear on. Everyone got soaked and it was thundering, and we're like holding chains and stuff, and we're like, I was saying to one of them, I was like, I don't think we should be out here in a thunderstorm, and he's like, nope. I was like, okay. So we stayed out there the whole time. I have boots that I think are normally waterproof. They're Doc Martens. They're like the pull-on ones, slip-ons, which are real handy for trucking. Highly recommend slip-on shoes. Slip-on shoes that are non-slip and waterproof are the gold standard, I would say, and ideally like composite or steel toe. I do have some steel toes there in my storage unit. But I was wearing shorts, the usual thing you guys have seen me wear in my videos, shorts with my compression socks. And shorts are not really ideal for a flatbed because you might have to kneel on the bed, stuff like that. So the rain wasn't penetrating the boot. It went into the top of my boots, and my feet were sloshing within a half hour or something, and the rest of the day my feet were wet and cold and like freaking pruny, and my hands too because my gloves got soaking wet because I didn't have waterproof gloves either. I luckily had my trusty rain jacket that my sister-in-law gave me. I love that jacket so much. It's a North Face jacket. I had that in my car. I ran and grabbed that, and I was very glad I did because it kept my base layers dry, but everybody else was soaked. And the instructors were up there like, I've got waterproof boots, do you? And to the sidekick, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's real shitty. You know, like, okay, people weren't prepared. Maybe they should have been, but they're coming from out of state. They can only bring so many things because they're probably flying here. Maybe they're driving or whatever, but they might not have been prepared because nothing in the materials told us to bring those items. So people were not aware maybe that they would be out in the elements and that we wouldn't be going inside if there was a thunderstorm. You know, people might not expect that. So don't be up there and be all cocky because your feet are staying dry, and then the rest of the day we have wet feet. Meanwhile, this hotel, I don't know what it is about this place, but everything perpetually feels kind of damp. Even though I've had my AC running the entire time I've been here, it's like you'll touch the bed or whatever and it feels like you're in a very humid room at all times. So my boots are still soaking wet, and thankfully there's a Cabela's like 10 minutes away from this place. I went and got some waterproof shoes last night, which I should have had anyway, and I got myself some overalls. You know, I have some overalls that I love. These ones aren't Dovetail, they're Carhartt, which is also good, and they were on clearance, which is awesome. So I'll feel more covered up today. If it rains, hopefully it won't go into the shoes and I will have dry feet, but it's just shitty energy takes away from what would otherwise be effective instruction in a very serious type of information that needs to be conveyed and understood by the people receiving it. And when you guys are telling us from the start of this class yesterday that so many of these securement jobs come back to the yard that are either illegal or not being done well, what you're telling us is there's a problem with the instruction at this company, because that's what it ultimately should fall back to. They just recently added this additional week of training, and I cannot imagine being sent out on the road with a day and a half or a day of securement training and a test that I probably barely passed because it's a lot of information and I wasn't really in a good headspace to memorize details that day. I could not imagine being sent out on the road to do securement with such little instruction. The fact that they just recently added this week of training blows my mind. So yeah, trucker world is also ego world, and ego world is a silly place to be. So I'm gonna do my breathing exercises and my yoga and go put up with another day of the trainer instructor sidekick show. See how that goes. Hello, people. I feel like I spoke too soon on some things, so I'm like, let me go back and watch what I recorded already and then see if I still feel the same way. So I'm in the securement training. Today's Wednesday, so we've been in the outside, like hands-on securement training for the last few days. I'll be honest, so far I'm not feeling awesome about things. It's okay, but the problem is there are too many of us and too few instructors. There are 12 people in the securement class, so it's really difficult for everybody to get an opportunity to do things. What they've basically been having us do is go to trailers that are already preloaded that people have brought back for relay loads that aren't due right away, and find whatever problems exist with those trailers in the way that the freight is secured, and then undo everything and redo it. I feel like I have to be thoughtful in criticism, and let me just preface by saying the instructors, there's two primary ones, and then today there was another one that came along too. Instead of like dividing and conquering, like, okay, we've got 3 instructors out here today and we've got 12 people, so let's like have people in groups and have you work together like 4 people in a group or something like that. It's like the 3 instructors kind of talking to each other, and then all of us sort of grouped together, and some of us just standing there watching because there's not enough space for us all to be working. But the instructors, the 2 primary ones, have only been doing this for like 6 weeks. Apparently before that it was like a day and a half of securement training, which makes my brain explode. So in an earlier clip that I, again, don't know if I'll use or not, I was like saying how great it is that this company has such good securement training, and I didn't realize how recent it was that they added this week of training. And I cannot imagine sending people out on the road with a day and a half that is basically like all in a classroom. That's just incredibly negligent in my opinion. But this is a training company, so I'm sure there's some stuff I don't know. Like there has to have been more training than that. Otherwise there'd be like crazy accidents happening or something. But then what really gets me is these 2 main instructors that we have, which I referred to in another clip as like the main guy and then sort of the sidekick, which it is kind of those vibes. The one has like 10 years of experience, the other one has like 4. They both clearly are very knowledgeable, but the 10-year instructor, the 10-year driver, more recent instructor, okay, in fairness, he hasn't been instructing people for very long, clearly, but his whole vibe is like very like full of himself and like bragging about how much faster he could do stuff than we could do it, you know. And it's like so off-putting, and it's so, more importantly, it's so unhelpful, because I don't care if you could do this in 15 minutes. That's neither here nor there. I would be impressed if you indicated that you really care about whether or not people understand this information. So like ask me like, what do you think about that? And if I don't get it right, instead of belittling a person or making it seem like, you know, you're cooler than them, just like make sure they get it, because this stuff is so serious. And it's just frustrating. It's frustrating, and it's like super trucker energy that is completely unproductive and ultimately worrisome for me. And then what's crazy too is this guy is watching all of these sees all these loads that have come back, and he's basically like kind of talking smack about the drivers that brought them back with the loads not secured correctly. But it's like, this points to a broader problem with these drivers not knowing what they're doing, or not caring and being allowed to continue not caring. And this brings me to another thing that's been driving me crazy all week. There's one guy in our group who, if I was the instructor, I would have sent him packing a long time ago. This guy, and I feel like I'm annoyed with myself because he's been such a distraction to me. I should just tune him out. This guy, we're all like standing around what's being worked on, like securing a coil with chains, like, you know, a 42,000 pound coil. Like, this is very serious stuff, and it has to be learned correctly. It has to be before we get sent out into the world to do it ourselves. And this guy is standing over there, leaning against a different empty flatbed, staring at his phone, zoning out. They tell us, okay, take this apart and go do the, you know, go redo it. And he literally walks away and goes and sits down on one of these other trailers that just sits and watches everybody. And I'm like, how is this person allowed to continue? Because this isn't like school where it's like, oh, some people are going to blow it off and it's on them. No, this is flatbed heavy cargo securement training. And I'm just like, how is this person still here? Why is this person taking up any space whatsoever? Like, I would have called the person's fleet manager and been like, this person is not appropriate for this account. Put him on dry van, because he can't be bothered. And if he cares so little about paying attention in the most important, like, new driver instruction, and okay, and for context, this is a young person. He's probably in his 20s, I would guess, maybe early 30s. Not someone who clearly has a lot of driving experience. Like, if this was a 50-something-year-old person who obviously knew things and that's why they were kind of blowing it off, I could kind of understand that, although I'd expect them to be an example to other drivers. And especially that we have some recent CDL drivers, which personally I don't think a recent CDL holder should be doing flatbed. I think there should be a waiting period. Like, I don't think it makes sense, because when you're a new driver, there's too much to learn and to like get muscle memory wise when it comes to pulling a load and maneuvering a truck, that I don't think you should be hauling freight that's that dangerous, and also like trying to get securement down while you're learning how to drive and maneuver a truck. I personally don't think that makes any sense, but that's just me. Some people might disagree with me on that. And of course, it depends on that person's previous experience. I know, thinking back, that when I first started driving and I was doing Conestoga, I wasn't prepared to be doing both, learning how to drive a truck and learning flatbed. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't safe, and that's why I walked away from it after a really short period of time. But I got to give credit, because while there were definitely holes in the training I received previously, it was better in a lot of ways, because it was one-on-one. There was a lot missing in terms of like, let's talk about this specific DOT regulation on this type of securement for this amount of weight and how many chains you need and da-da-da. Like, there could have been a lot more of that. But you know, it's as if you have less instruction right now because you have too many people, and the instructors you do have are too busy trying to be cool to like make sure that the people in the group understand what they're being taught. It's really worrisome to me. So then I was told by my recruiter, word to the wise, recruiters always tell you part of the truth, and I don't think it's like a whole effort to like lie, but sometimes I don't think they're fully aware of things or whatever, who knows. Well, I found out that while I was supposed to have a day and a half that's pretty much classroom securement training, then a week out on the yard, which is where you really learn, because you really need to put your hands on these things to learn them, and learn how to handle things. Like handling chains and handling binders and stuff is not something that's easy if you've never done it before. For anybody, it takes a little bit of like doing. And then I was supposed to have at least 3 days with a local flatbed driver trainer. Well, guess what? They have one local flatbed driver trainer, and that person is fully like booked, so they don't have availability. So I'll be going off on my own, and I'm just gonna have to take my time. And yeah, they have you send photos of all of the securement that you do before you're even allowed. Like if it's a load that gets tarped, you can't put the tarp on until you have gotten your securement approved, and then you probably have to, I think you have to send another picture after you tarp it. So it's going to be real slow going for me in the beginning, especially because I haven't been able to have as much hands-on time as I want. I don't feel like I fully understand some of the things I need to understand, but flatbed is a long, slow learning curve, I think, in general, and it should be. you know, if that makes sense. I don't know. Again, maybe some people who are experienced drivers watching this will disagree with me on that, and that's fair. If you do, make it known. Share your thoughts in the comments, please. Share your feelings with the group. I've resisted the urge to do that in a Butthead voice, Beavis and Butthead. If anyone gets that reference, like that specific phrase with Butthead saying it, then you might be as old as I am. Anyway, I really want to do well. I want to execute this. I want to kick ass, but I wish I had the tools I need. And some of it is just going to fall on me to like watch videos and practice and take my sweet time. And I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. But on a positive side note, I'm looking at an apartment in Chicago on Saturday, and I've been debating whether or not I would get an apartment in the city. I don't know if I will end up getting this one, but it's like on the beach. There's something kind of to look forward to. I don't know if I'll end up renting an apartment right now until later, but I just thought it'd be something good to look into to give me something positive to think about of like ultimately having a home base. And I spoke with my new fleet manager today. I really got a positive impression of him right off the bat. He sounded really cool, and he is a former flatbed driver. On the flatbed accounts, all the fleet managers are former flatbed drivers, so that gives me some solace. And I expressed to him that I'm interested in doing a local flatbed job after I do my time national, which you have to do minimum 6 months, but who knows, if they need a local driver, maybe they'll make an exception. I think I would get a lot better, a lot faster if I drove around Chicago, which yeah, it would suck, I'll tell you right now, but you're securing multiple loads a day versus securing one load and then traveling, you know, however many hundreds of miles with it or 1,000 miles. You're doing multiple loads a day and you're driving in very difficult circumstances being in the Chicago area. So I know I can handle that. It wouldn't be fun, but I'd get real good real quick. So, and then I could justify having an apartment, staying closer to home and being home every night. How about that? What an idea. What a thought. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's all I got for now. Hopefully I will get this uploaded, and I will catch you guys later with some updates. Thanks for watching.